So I'm going to go ahead and call this to order, shall I?
Oh, sorry. I can do that.
First item on the agenda is roll call. Me, I'm here. Alex Zacharias. Posy C. Good Sir Alderman.
Present.
Matt Buchanan.
Here.
And Kevin Hutchinson.
Here.
Beth Lemke. Paul Grawl. And Matt Vanden Newman.
Here.
Alright, next item on the agenda, approval of the agenda.
Seconded.
Moved by Randy, second by Kent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Approval of minutes from the December 4th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved from Randy, second from Matt. Regular business. Consider with possible action on approval of GVPAC budget for fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2020.
All right, that will be me.
Yeah.
So in your packet, you'll find that the budget was given out. It is just proposed, so changes can be made as you want. We just kind of went off where we were at the end of last year and looked at a few things. So most of what you have is not new to you. I think the only big change would be the sidewalks. We did put a little bit more money in there to hopefully do another round of sidewalk stuff in 2020.
You mean poetry, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah, your sidewalk poetry. And like I said, this is proposed, so if there are changes, you can always make those at a time. Also, you can make them throughout the year at any time. It's just good to have a budget, established that way. Staff has guidelines, and anyone from the outside public would also kind of know what direction this board is headed.
Right.
All right?
Any questions, comments?
Showing something like 20,394 in carryover from CDBG. So that's for funds we'll hold over for next year.
Those are dollars that just have not been allocated. So if a project comes up that you guys are, find out about late and you're just like, oh, we really want to do this, you do have that CDBG money that could be allocated for that. It would just have to, with CDBG money, it would just have to make sure that it falls into the regulations that CDBG has set for that.
And then the RDA has to approve those.
And same with the Friends money, that would have to be approved by the Friends group for whatever purpose you propose.
And that's not something we've discussed as a group, Laura, is it? I was absent from the last meeting, so I don't know if we talked about what that process is.
As far as the Friends
Yeah.
money. So after this meeting, I'm hoping to have a meeting with our Friends group.
Great.
And have a select few at the table for that to get that ball rolling.
Okay.
So that we can start relaying, this committee can start relaying, we would like to use X amount of this money towards rotating arts or things like that, and then the Friends group can check off on it and send it over, basically.
All right.
Looks good. Yep.
So what's our possible action here? Just to approve it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right?
A motion to approve the budget as is. Second.
Moved by Kent, second by Randy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's probably a screen vote.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes.
approved. Thank you. All right, consideration with possible action to approve the Alleyway transformation RFP for a permanent art installation utilizing CDBG beautification funds. The art installation option was selected by the GBPAC at their September 25th, 2019 meeting and approved by the Redevelopment Authority at their October 8th, 2019 meeting. So the materials that we have here, have folks had a chance to look at them? Laura, do you want to talk about the project itself? Is there anything more we should know?
So the draft RFP that you guys had in your packets, all the items that were in bold and red, those are items that still need to be fleshed out as far as restrictions on the alleyway. I'm still waiting on one property owner. You can see up on the image here, so this is boat art. The two alleyways that we have are in between Keen Printing and this is Jill's Bar. I have not yet confirmed this location. I'm still waiting to hear back from the owner. But we do have confirmation on at least one side of the alleyway. And the same thing is down over here, which this is Elf's Gifts. They've already agreed, but I need to find out who actually owns that, because it's a LLC that has no name, actually. Well, it has a name.
What's the building on the left? That confirmed?
Elf's Gifts. It's that red, funky building.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't know what it was either. So we at least have two building faces that are approved that could be eligible for artists to use. They could use both, or just focus their energies on one alley. And here's a few examples that are provided in that RFP to kind of show options that might be available. Some of them do span the whole space, which I'm pretty confident that I'll get approval from Jill for that side. So we'll at least have one whole alleyway and then a half, hopefully. And I'm working with Department of Public Works as far as their restrictions on installation height, how far it can come down, how far it can come out from the building face, all of those details which would be included in the RFP for artists to move forward with. Something that Kelly and I had gone over before was, I don't know if you want to say the message of the piece or how it speaks to this area. I didn't include anything like that in here, but if the committee feels that there's something that really should be, that the artist should be focusing on as far as like a theme or a message throughout their installation, we can add that in.
I don't think the language I used was theme or message. I would be hesitant to prescribe that kind of thing, but what I was saying was that I think something for the Public Art Commission to strive for in the evolution of the commission is to take into account two things, especially for this site-specific work. One, who is it that you're trying to engage? Who's your audience? That's a pretty fundamental question and it needs to be asked. So one of the conversations that we were having is who is walking down this corridor? What kind of numbers do we have? Where are they going? Are we looking to engage families? Is there some traffic pattern that we're trying to drive down this stretch? Typically, that's a conversation that you provide to the artist. Secondly, having a conversation with the economic development energy behind this particular corridor. What's their vision for this stretch? Are there notable conversations happening about who they're trying to attract to this particular stretch? I understand there's a time constraint here with the CDBG and it needs to be used, and so in the interest of pragmatism, I'm not really sure how thorough we're going to be able to be, but I think as a commission we need to strive to move beyond what's referred to as plunking art and really take into account the site itself and the audience served.
I was wondering about the site itself. Was there a reason for picking boat art? It's kind of off the way in some ways. I mean, it's an area that's developing.
It's slightly off the beaten track, but it's still within the arts district.
Mm-hmm.
And I think personally, the arts district could use a bit more art within that area. I don't think,
But Main Street would have more traffic after alleys on Main Street.
as far as what we've seen, like, even that, like, the one by Elf's Gifts, that is a slight stretch just because those buildings are so short. So we did have some issues finding decent alleyways in themselves. But there is, I mean, there's a lot of development going on in this area. There's apartments and townhouses,
Yep.
right, that are being put in over there. And Whitney Park has a lot of summertime events that do occur. And then there's 2 Asian markets on
Right.
the street.
I was going to say, I
And
would like to
those-
see kind of something with an Asian,
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word theme either, Asian influence, Asian, I don't know,
But at least speaking to
the Asian
that culture
culture.
and the what is already there.
Mhm.
Wasn't there also, across from the Asian market, that empty lot was going to be developed into another grocery store
yeah,
and
yeah.
apartments?
Yeah, just for their stuff up here.
And I know NeighborWorks, we just acquired the attic and that whole corner, and we've got some plans in the works to.
There's definitely an energy behind
Yeah,
this
so
area.
right,
There's
bookending that whole block,
momentum.
there's stuff going on.
But,
I like that we're working with the intention, with, as you said, whether it's economic development or who's our audience. And I think if we help the artists understand that they're just not artists, they're community artists, and that might help in their identity as an artist within the community.
Have we engaged with Sally and Jeff over at Old Main Street yet about this project?
We brought it forward a while ago, back when it was initially started. It hasn't changed a whole lot from when we first brought it to them. And I don't think, aside from building owners, we've received any other inputs, unless that's changed. I don't know if we want to open the floor.
Shall we open the floor? Let's open the floor.
motion to open the floor. Second.
Motion from Randy, second from Alex. It's open. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now it's open.
Great. I've only been with downtown for a short
Please
time.
state
so
your
I need to
name
give
and
you name. Oh,
address.
sorry. An address?
Yes. You can give your work address if you prefer.
Okay, Sally Ebling, 130 East Walnut Street in the Bellin Building. I've only been here a short time, so I wasn't here at the beginning of this project, but we definitely feel like this area is an under-highlighted part of Old Main Street. It is in the Arts District. I think it's really great to kind of activate these 2 alleyways. Like Laura said, you have Whitney Park right there with the summer events. You have the attic on the corner. Just bringing more traffic to connect that corridor would be really great. So we are excited to help in whatever way we can. I know we're working with Laura to get some of the business owners and the names of those parts. But yeah, we're happy to help move this forward.
So I think that the foot traffic to the Whitney Park summer activities comes up a lot. That's something that should really be in the call. Those kinds of things are helpful to an artist in understanding exactly who it is they're trying to engage.
Maybe the Asian markets too. The 2
Right.
Asian markets
Yeah.
could be mentioned.
I'm not opposed to these locations, though I do voice some concern just about the practicality of visibility. Like the way they are now, there's not a lot of foot traffic that's going through there. Not that I'm aware of. The Whitney Park is there, but whenever, and I've gone to lots of events there, but I haven't parked in the, on Bodart. Is there another initiative behind potentially driving traffic down there? Is there any initiative on the periphery of the city that we can point to that might incentivize more walking on that street?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know if anything like that is included in the bike ped plan that Steph developed. If there is, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, like to your point, like definitely, I think it's lacking art, that area for sure. And if we put $25,000 into it, or not the budget, 27, into this project, we're going to get a decent, installation there. Is that alone going to, bolster the foot traffic.
Well, that was really my larger point, Kent, is that it's not a bad use to have the intention to use art as one component of activating a corridor.
Right.
But if it's not working in conjunction with other energies, it's you can't place the responsibility of activating that corridor on the shoulders of an artist without being one cog of multiple things.
Right.
Celestine Jeffries, Chief of Staff. I think one thing as you're contemplating not only making an action today regarding this installation, but also moving forward, CDBG eligible areas are areas that are lower in income.
Right.
And so these are areas where you may or may not currently have the kind of economic activity that you may want to match, right, or be in harmony with. And so CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. Like I said, these are usually areas that are 60% AMI?
Yep.
60% of area median income. Area median income for this MSA, this Metropolitan Service Area today for a family of four is $80,000. So you will have a tension as you move forward with using this kind of money if we are able to use it again in the future.
Definitely.
Well, I understand there might not be existing economic activity, and that's really the purpose of the funds. I do think it still merits a conversation with multiple stakeholders in the corridor. So, like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying this is part of this installation is a part of three components that we're sort of coming at this corridor with to inject some energy in the corridor. I think is perfectly good. But I just across the board, I would love for the commission to start asking those questions per regular, every project. Who else have we spoken to? What else is happening on that corridor? Is this the best option? Again, understanding there's some time sensitivity here. I don't really know how rigorous and thorough we can be in those conversations, but they should become a matter of course.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we have to look at the long term, extrapolated to the future with the city developing so quickly because it seems to be exploding. So it's sort of anticipating 5-10 years down the line. Just have that in mind.
Right. And I'm looking at this map right now in greenbaywisconsin.gov. It looks like the entire art district is in CDGB eligible district. So, we could, I think, potentially, are we open to finding new locations at all? Or are we pretty set?
We can. Please send them to me today so I can start reaching out.
Yeah, I don't know if we have an opportunity to come back to commission though. I don't
As
know.
of Monday, my impression was that no, we don't have time to find a
That
location.
is my impression,
That's the
too.
message I got, which is why I prefaced this whole thing by saying perhaps this particular project doesn't allow for options of locations, but in general, I'm just as a comment on how we're working, I think that's how we need to be working, and I think you see that in the plans that we all review.
And for that, going back to the budget, that reserve CD money that we have, using that forward, definitely have these plans in place.
Right.
And there's internal, I'm on a lot of extra meetings now as far as working with neighborhoods and really deciding what are the best areas to utilize this money. Because this first time around, we have a lot of growing pains. It's kind of here's this money, do something with it.
Understood.
So there are, going forward, this is not how I would
Right.
like to do this, but like Kelly said, with the time constraints, this is just how
It is an area that's seen a lot of development, and housing as well as other development. So, I think we will see more foot traffic and everything.
Yeah, I think boat art's going to be, it is a huge opportunity. It's a great connector between Whitney Park and the downtown with all the new development coming. This is going to be a better pedestrian corridor. I think it's a
I walk it all the
time.
time.
A great time right now to start investing in public art right there to make that a better destination than what it is today. I think a great idea would be to engage those property owners and residents in the area and invite them to our next meeting, or whenever it is the time to, when it's the time to select the piece, and have them share their input.
You know, that shouldn't be an
That's helpful.
afterthought. I think that should be an automatic as far
It
as.
should be,
And I
absolutely.
definitely mentioned that to them when I spoke with them, that we hope to have them at the table. And in the RFP, it actually lists that you guys will be developing a committee, so
Great.
it would be this body, and then, like you just mentioned, those property owners and people who are.
Yeah, and I mean, not just the property owners of the 4 buildings there, but the entire street.
There is one thing I was concerned about, I guess, is we were interested in the foot traffic and everything, but if I'm not mistaken, these alleys are also used for automobile traffic. I don't know if truck traffic as well, as far as any deliveries or anything, but I don't know how heavily they're used for auto traffic. I don't know. I certainly think even if it's not a whole lot, it will limit some of the things. I mean, like I don't think some of these art pieces would work with the alley's not wide enough to have a car go through and have the piece be there. And I'm also concerned about, some of the hanging sculptures, which I think are really cool, but I don't know how that would work as far as, our windy weather, or, we'd have to cover that alley then. I'm assuming to have something hanging from it, which I don't know how that would all work.
I mean, I'm trying to think of the other cities that I've seen that have, they'll have like umbrella installations or all sorts of these kind of hanging pieces over streets, over active streets, not just alleyways. I can't recall if their weather is like Wisconsin exactly,
Yeah.
but
I think Boston has the umbrellas over the street.
They do.
You're never going to make anything fully waterproof. You just hope that.
Well, I'm not worried about the water. I'm worried about the wind, especially down an alley.
Well, nothing's ever going to survive weather long term. You just have to, when you make the piece, make extra pieces that can be replaced.
Maybe we need to have a little bit more structure in the call for just like application as far as public works is concerned, like
And that-
code violations. or-
I need that information from
Yeah.
Public Works,
But that's-
because that will be highlighted then as far as, like Randy said, which I can change the images to, because some of these flat right
Images
out
are okay.
gonna work.
Yeah.
Like the pink one, that just isn't gonna work for a
Right.
functioning alleyway,
Right.
but.
The cars do go down there, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
We have to maintain that.
They can.
yep,
We can,
They, I
right?
mean, even if they don't, they can.
Right,
yeah,
right.
so
Okay.
that means that we have to maintain it.
Right.
And I really like the sculpture with the pouring milk, but I don't know how that would work in the alley. I mean, I don't think it
These
could.
are just ideas. They're not
Right.
like-
I also think we have to rely on the expertise of the art. I mean, they do this, right? It's their job to
Yeah.
find solutions.
Okay,
for-
yeah.
One concern that I have is the budget breakdown, and I'm wondering if there's a motivation behind separating the total budget into these two different categories of artist stipend and materials budget.
That was just what I based off of other calls that I had seen as far as installation pieces, but it can be adjusted or just not specified if that's.
That's what I would suggest. If it's not a big deal, that just gives the artist a little bit more freedom. Also, it prevents them from getting hung up if they have a $27,000 budget and the actual application of the artist of the art development goes a different direction, which has happened to me many times. Then they're kind of bound to this breakdown slightly, and I'm not so sure this breakdown really benefits anything. So that would be my one amendment.
Okay.
And are we looking to do both alleys with this amount of money, or just one?
It's open to both alleys, and also in the RFP it lists that if the artist wants to pursue a different location that hasn't been listed in here on boat art, we would work through that process to see if that's an eligible and okay location for them to pursue. But at the moment, we've just selected these two. So they could have a piece that is in two locations but is essentially one piece, or they can really focus their energy in one of the alleyways if it speaks to them more.
I like that. I think
Yeah.
that'd be great if they could utilize both. But having the freedom just to do one is good too.
I have a question about installation duration. We should be investing in temporary art pieces, but with this particular project, with it being a bigger budget, I wonder if we want to have it be longer than a minimum of 6 months.
And I put 6 months just because for CD money, you need it to be at least 6 months.
Oh, okay.
But that's just, it has to be at least 6 months. It can be more.
Over those federal standards.
Yep.
I just wouldn't want any artist to be submitting several submissions with very temporary pieces if it's something that we wouldn't really consider because it's such a big budget.
That's a good point. Okay, I looked right over that part.
Are we looking for this to be something more permanent? Or wishing it to be?
I think so.
That's my personal opinion, just because it is such a big dollar amount. I would hope it would last several years.
Several years, yeah.
Does like 5 to 10 years seem more reasonable, or 3 to 10?
3 to 10.
3 to 10 sounds
3.5.
I mean, it's going to depend on the materials.
That definitely, I think, will change the applications that we get if we take,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think 3 to 10
Maybe
is.
a minimum of 3 years to permanent.
To forever.
That'd be a really awesome $27,000 6-month piece.
After we're all
cool. That'd be really awesome. Okay. Let's consider.
And then just one thing that I want to point out, as far as submission details, so the breakdown of that, those artists would need to submit their preliminary proposal, so all of the requirements that are listed out in here, they would need to have those into us by March. I would let you review those initially, and if you have additional questions that you would like to ask of the artist, like you see, your budget looks weird, like what is this? You would send those to me, and then I could send them back to those artists so they know. So that way when we meet, to make our meetings as efficient as possible, I can bring those items that you had issues with to the table, so that you don't have any lingering questions, I guess.
Right.
Do you have additional questions or commentary on this RFP? Our consideration today is to approve it.
We need to close that.
Oh, yes, I'm closing the floor.
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
To those, all in favor?
Aye. There's no one else who wants to speak, right? Okay, yep.
Are we ready to consider that, or we have more?
Sure. A motion to adopt this RFP with the suggested amendments.
Second.
Moved by Kent, second by Randy, all in favor?
Aye.
There we go.
Oh, right.
Vote.
I voted.
Not popping up.
Mine did.
Mine did.
I'm sorry, I'm a little slow, everyone. Do I have to go back
No,
to the
no, you don't
agenda?
have to do anything.
What is your vote?
Yes.
Okay, so unanimously approved.
Thank you. Thank you for your work on that, Laura.
Yep.
It's not done yet, but thank you.
No, but it's a good template for this larger scale work, and
It's exciting.
you put, yeah, it's very exciting. You put a lot of thought and work into it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda: financial report.
I don't know if we both want to take team. This is basically what you had seen before. yeah, basically what you saw before. If you have any questions now, let us know.
We're gonna get a financial report. Do we decide quarterly?
It's a funky amount.
Okay. A few times a year.
It's ahead of the granting process.
Yes.
So we don't have this money yet.
What?
We've got this, this is,
I'm sorry, what?
how much money do we have?
We have 126,000.
26,400, okay, that's what I was thinking, yeah,
Yep.
good, yeah.
And then the Friends, what is the charge of the Friends again?
The Friends is responsible for fundraising for the PAC.
Okay. And is there going to be an update on that work, like maybe in a couple months or something?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I'm hoping to have a meeting after this weekend.
Okay, yeah. I just didn't know if you were not.
Quick question with the Friends budget. Are those funds for us to use, or could that group use those funds on their own in a different way outside of our organization?
I mean, if they were sneaky, yes.
Okay. I didn't know, like, sometimes you need to invest a little to do a fundraiser, so I don't know if those funds were set aside partly for those sorts of efforts.
And that's something that I think needs to be discussed with that Friends group.
I also would really, I mean, I'm assuming there's going to be some formal language adopted for the Friends. And
They have bylaws and an article of association, and
so there is not language that prohibits them from allocating their funds towards work outside the commission?
You don't have any control over that group. They are their own group, they're their own entity, own EIN number. You have no control over them. You can't dictate to them what happens with that. That is their money and their decision, completely.
So is there anything that states that the funds are being raised to support the work of the commission?
it says it in the Articles of Association, which I thought was enough, but Stephanie had.
But they still, to support, what's your idea of support? Well, we're gonna do this art in this place. We're supporting the arts, but it might not run through you.
And is there, okay.
So do we have to ask them if, when a project comes up, or they just give us money from time to time?
We request it, but I mean, the sole purpose of developing this, from at least my perspective, was so that, I mean, what's the likelihood that they're gonna just maintain the autonomy and just allocate dollars elsewhere?
And that's why you want to make sure you have a board that understands the direction
I see.
of what it was is.
Which is why a plan's so
What is-
important.
Because
Okay.
that's it. I mean, it
Right.
all depends on the board of that place. I mean, hopefully that they will be very, they'll have the same view as this board and there will be no issue.
How does
Well,
the Main Beach handle this? I mean, do they just one day show up and say,
Decide.
no, we don't want a Ferris wheel, we want a carousel?
Oh,
That I'm not sure of.
Yes. So-
Yes. Great.
So we need to
Good to
be
know.
really good friends with them.
Yeah.
You need to be friends.
I think we're friends.
So that was
And it's written down somewhere. I mean, what did you say that in the article? What
Of
article?
association.
Of association.
So that was my question, that not the 10 grand almost, it's not really ours to do with whatever we,
Not yet.
yeah.
We make buckets, and then they decide what bucket to put it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. That seems appropriate.
yeah.
We can suggest which
I
bucket.
was gonna say, you can make suggestions
Yeah.
and then I'll be the middleman that sends it to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Could it be suggested to them that they allocate funds toward the granting process?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess in the initial conversations with the friends, I would think it would be helpful, one, to communicate to them that there is a plan forthcoming, and that our hope is that they will view it as their mission to support that plan.
Yeah, they should be very engaged in the
Yeah.
plan preparation process.
Yeah.
So we would want them included.
Have they ever been to one of our meetings?
No. Well,
We don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
I'm sure they watch them all on YouTube.
I see.
Probably.
Doesn't everybody?
Okay, other questions about the budget?
We don't need to vote on this.
No, the only thing, we don't need to vote, I guess.
No.
I just want to reinforce then that this is the report from which we will, and Laura will be really explicit with us, that we're taking the number that we're distributing in grants in our next granting cycle. So we know in here where this is coming from. We're looking at applications as a whole, and we know what our lump sum is, as opposed to the way we've been kind of operating up until now.
And I mean, not to make things more complicated, but there are other things that you could allocate this money towards, not just grants, like Kent has suggested many times before, signing up for that public art portal so we have a larger spread of artists to share that with. I think that would be a wise allocation of some of these funds. Also, participating within local events like Mardi Gras is coming up, registration fees for those types of things. Art Street, we don't have anything allocated towards those at this moment, so those might be additional things that we'd want to consider, or at least send
Set
to
up
the
like an
friends.
informational booth about us.
Yep, we would be in the cultural area, so along with like Neville Museum and those types of things. That's just something to think about. It's
Right.
not need to be decided on today.
And that CDBG funding was kind of alluded earlier. We are on a deadline to get those spent by November of this year. So we've got $20,000 left over to figure out something to do with those funds. So.
And so I would anticipate what we have set up as a template for a process now with this original alley art. If we were to begin that process now, we would have a little bit longer to engage some of the stakeholders from, but we should probably have some recommendations about like what the best utilization of these funds is over the course of the year.
And so speaking on that installation, in the agenda it says the art installation option was selected by you guys. I don't know if you remember way back when, but I had submitted 4 different ideas to you as far as the installation. There was a mural, and you had ranked those, so we can refer back to that. I think the mural was your second option, if I remember correctly. I'd have to review the minutes. It's been a while, but we can refer to that as far as a direction to use these funds also. In the meantime, just because we do have that time crunch, but I know internally there's a lot of movement behind really developing a plan and really looking at the city as a whole for where these need areas are and where we might be best utilizing this money in the future. It just kind of, it was a happy accident, but not an accident, but a happy surprise that was surprising. So kind of pedaling to keep up with it, but.
Great. Anything else on the financial report? Questions for Laura? Nope. All right. On informational, moving on to the review of arts and culture strategic plans from other cities to determine which elements should be included in the Green Bay Arts and Culture Strategic Plan.
Homework.
Yeah, I gave you guys homework. Each of you were tasked with reviewing a strategic plan. And I did read through all of these, so I can hopefully help you out. But I really wanted today to be pointing out things that you think should be included in our new strategic plan going forward. In the planning department here, we are working on a comprehensive plan for the entire city. So our strategic plan that we had developed in 2018, I believe, it's definitely out of date, and I think it was developed as a temporary plan. So I think going forward, to coincide with that comprehensive plan, it would be in our best interest to really develop a firm arts and culture strategic plan so that we know what we're doing, staff knows what we're doing, the community knows that we have a vision going forward. And some of the strategic plans that I reviewed, community input varied. Some of them just sent out an online survey, whereas others, they held open houses and they had an online survey and they had multiple means of engaging that audience. So I wanted today to be an opportunity for us to really highlight, yes, these are things that we should be including, or no, that's not important for us right now. And then it's going to be a big discussion. I understand we probably won't have time for all of it, but if you have additional comments, please email them to myself or to Kelly.
So the first thing is this should really limit itself to public art, I think. There already is an effort and a body that's been elected by the arts and culture community to represent the arts and culture stakeholders at large. And part of the work of that group is to create a Greater Green Bay Arts and Culture Strategic Plan. So I think one thing that I feel pretty strongly about is that we should limit our scope to public art. I did notice, I had Duluth, Georgia, which I've actually been to.
No,
Yes, I have family.
that's cheating.
I have family down
That
there.
is cheating.
It's a charming town.
I didn't know that when I signed it.
I thought I just got it because it was the longest.
Are you sure? Mine was 86 pages.
All right, even.
A lot of
even.
those are pictures, though, and I read through all of them.
So anyway, one item I think, and this has to do also with the capacity of just our lone staff person and the commission. I really think it would behoove us to limit the scope of our work to public art. So that was one thing. And I also,
Well, also, I mean, sorry,
also,
because on that note, would it make sense for that other entity in the GBPAC to just pair up to create more comprehensive one? Or?
it depends on what the process is, right? I mean, I think that public art certainly needs to be a component of the larger arts and cultural
So that
plan.
could just be placed into it?
And I would say that when that entity really digs into the work, that public art should say there is a public art plan. We prefer that you reflect the,
Sure.
right?
You'd think they'd come to us.
Yeah, so you would think. Any case, that's just one, and the way we're talking about this and thinking about this that felt important to me. Do we just want to go plan by plan, Laura?
Sure. And so reading through all of these, I don't know if you guys were able to read through, if you selected a specific one that you wanted, but the one that I actually felt was strongest was Matt's plan from Lancaster. I don't know if I want to give you additional homework, but if you really would like to review the Lancaster plan, I think it touches on understanding that staff is limited in the scope of what they can do. It understands that, and it really lays it out in a clear view for community members to understand. Because I think that's something that's really important, and that's with this being an arts commission and it being based in government. I work here, and when I hear government, my eyes glaze over. And I don't want that to be the case with this. I want this to be something that's approachable for people, for art organizations and artist leaders and regular small-time starting out artists to really be able to read and understand, oh, like this is what they're doing, this is how I can be involved. And I thought the Lancaster plan laid that out the best.
I agree. It was a very concise 28 pages with lots of photos and other images. So it was very to the point, clear, very user-friendly. Just the voice of the narrative was, you could tell it was written for the community and for artists. Being a planner myself, I've seen lots of different documents for cities, and they can be incredibly long and boring and for city staff, and that's not what this should be. Another thing that Lancaster did that I am going to really fight for with our plan is they really had a huge public engagement component to this. They did so much more than just an online survey. They did the public open houses, they had stakeholder meetings, they engaged with the business improvement districts, which have their own efforts in public art, and that's something that I think we should do. I also really like their structure. It was, like I said, clear and to the point. They had their introduction, the principles, vision, goals, strategies, and focus areas and benchmarks, which is something that our current strategy does not include. That's kind of my 2 cents. I encourage you all to read it. It's a good
How do they compare population-wise? Are we kind of a match?
Laura wrote it down for me. They are just under 60,000, so they're quite a bit smaller than us.
Yeah.
Majority of the plans actually have a smaller population compared to Green Bay. Duluth has 29,000 roughly. Sugarland has 88,000. And Albuquerque has 550,000. So a little bit of a variance there, but I think like Matt had said, just the sheer energy of really engaging the public in multiple ways, having family-friendly, easily accessible opportunities, having it online, having it on social media. I think that's going to be key as far as getting the widest scope of input for how we want to shape the future of public art for the community.
When I was looking this over, I really liked the implementation timeline at the end there.
I like that too.
I think that's just a really good way to basically just give a roadmap of what you want to do.
Just check off projects as we go.
So artists are known to steal from other artists. Is that what we're doing?
We're being inspired.
We're being inspired. No strategic plan will fit every city. Each city has its unique aspects, and I can't remember which plan it was, and maybe it was in a few of them, but they actually had key locations where they're like, hey, this needs something. I think that's also something that we should incorporate.
The city plan that is in development is actually going to be structured somewhat differently than the city planning document has in the past, and it actually is going to be built around neighborhoods and corridors. So I think that it would behoove us to think in the same way, so that it's easy for. Who did we chat with, Laura?
Dave. He's a planner.
Yeah, Dave very generously shared kind of what their thinking is in the creation of that document. And my past experience with this is that the easier we make it for people to adopt our language and our goals, the more consistent reflection we will have in representation in other plans. And since there are several plans being drafted around the region, it seems like that's a way that people are thinking. The things that in the Duluth plan, the things I thought were really important is they were very clear about what their definition of public art was. I didn't actually agree with it, but it was very clear what it was.
I was going to say, they had 6 specific types laid out. I don't know if anyone else wants to read through it.
And so I think that's worthwhile. They provided, I thought this was I've never seen anyone do this before, and I probably worked on 140 cultural plans when I was at the Kennedy Center. They provided what they call a palette to inspire artists, and the palette was clearly taken from like economic development and branding language, but it was really cleverly done, and I think it's the kind of thing that provides useful parameters for artists that communicate effectively in a metaphorical, visually inspired language as opposed to a bureaucratic language. Kind of what the hopes and aspirations for the city itself is, using the city's own branding strategy, which seemed very smart to me. And that also, I think, was something that struck me about the Duluth plan, was that it was incredibly unilateral. So the plan itself actually came from not just the Public Art Commission, but also signed off on by the City Council, letter from the mayor. It put a really united front forward. So it wasn't just a document issued by the commission itself, which I thought was quite powerful. And then the last thing that I thought was useful is similar to what Matt said. It seemed to have a dual audience, community and artist. And as a resource for the artist, how an artist can see themselves in the vision for the city, but also just as a tool of explanation to the community. I thought, although the writing was terrible, I thought it did eventually achieve those two things. But it was way too long, and it was really poorly written.
I do like how they've got these priority areas and projects. That's something I think we could probably do here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that mapping tool, basically.
Yeah.
Future projects, like we're ready to go here, we just need funding.
Exactly. I think
Right.
it'd be good if we identified some very specific locations, but then beyond that, if we could maybe create some criteria or just some descriptions as to what areas do we want to invest in for public art.
And I think that this is something Ken has been talking about for a long time, and we just need to get it done, is some parameters for what we have been calling signature projects. All of the creative placemaking grants where you're looking at $500,000, serious dollars for public art, you're never going to be able to prepare a proposal in the timeline between the call for the grants and the submission of it. It's really work we need to be doing on an ongoing basis so that we're always ready to go. And this would be yet another place that those could live. These are things that are ready, and that's how funders identify opportunities, individual funders as well. And it's much easier for our friends to raise money for the commission if they have really specific examples of the kind of things that we're talking about and where we're talking about.
I also saw in this one, they basically write out the process for artist selection. Which I thought was not only good for outside, but also inside. So we have that formalized.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, I think if we use as our North Star the community involvement, that intention, that's what drives us as far as having the community have a voice. I think that's important.
Were there other qualities that people saw in the plans that they reviewed that felt important to include?
Yeah, who's next? You want to go next?
Sure. Well, my dog ate my homework. Just had to say that.
Sitting on that weather.
I thought that the Albuquerque one had some interesting things. I thought one thing that was kind of interesting is they used a lot of diagrams.
That's good.
To present information. And then they would follow that up with written into more detail.
Yeah. This one wasn't visually as exciting, but they really laid out, I think they called it like their logic model as far as these are the steps that we went through. It felt very scientific. These are the steps that we went through. I don't think I would necessarily want to lay ours out like this, but I do think it's important to incorporate that in there of like, oh, we didn't just like pull this stuff out of a hat. Like, these are the things that, like, we did community outreach. We had these meetings. We had social media surveys. Like, I think it is important to list what we've gone through to get the outcomes that we do get.
I thought the idea of a diagram was a good idea, but some of the things they did with it, holy cow.
And this one was only a 1 year, or like a 12 to 18 month plan. So I guess that kind of bridges into my next thing of, do you guys have a set timeline that you're...
Well, can you finish his report?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
They did do, some of this we've already talked about, so I'm not going to, specific areas that they were focusing on, and I thought that might be something we might also want to do. Like, maybe even a include our map of where we've got our work already. I mean, they didn't have maps in this one, they just gave descriptions of where they want to focus on, but maybe we could also, I see some of the others have maps, we also included our map of where we've got our work, might be something to put in there. With theirs, it was very, I mean, there were strategic corridors that they needed to work on. I think with us, though, we're kind of, it'd be, I mean, if we talked about every area,
It would be an 82 plan.
yeah, you know,
I think
so
having
we're a little
bullet
different,
lists,
I think.
though, because they have them listed. I think they just have like they have those specific areas listed out, but they really dive into them. Like they have like five. Like these are the 5 that we're going to do. Like these are the things that we want to see here.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it might be better for us since we are a lot wider, a lot bigger in scale, to have more of those bullet points.
Yeah.
Because these were like, we want to have something like on the edge of Route 66, like a long spans of highway. Whereas I envision ours being more underserved areas, like, oh, under this underpass or within this chain link fence that's up against Whitney Park or whatever. It's not some like small scale stuff in addition to those larger signature pieces.
And to strike a balance where we can sprinkle some very specific things in there that we know we want to do, but also create the framework of a guide, really, just general information to guide us in future decisions that are not really there yet specifically.
Yeah. And I think, I can't remember which plan it was, it might have been Lancaster's, but, and you had mentioned it too, of providing that framework for artists who don't necessarily view themselves as a muralist or a sculptor, but they do create art. So to have some of these smaller opportunities where, like, oh, hey, like, I could knock out something on that small wall, or, you know, rather than us presenting, oh, we have this large $27,000 alley project. And they're like, well, I just do stuff in my basement. Like, I'm not qualified. I want this to be something that artists just starting out and artists who are moving here really can feel that they can pick up right when they like set foot in the city and feel that they can put something at an approved or suggested location in the city. And something that Albuquerque had, they actually developed a mural plan with guidelines. So it kind of laid it out for artists like, oh, like, I want to try a mural. And then it actually has kind of the steps that they would need to go through to make that happen. I think that's something that Matt had touched on as far as just making it easier for artists to do what they do best.
Making the process less intimidating.
Yeah.
That takes half the fun out of it. And they did, which I don't think we should do, is they list the mediums for the projects, which I thought kind of limits artists. I didn't really care. But there was one thing, I bring this up, just because there's one thing I saw that I had never heard of before. I wondered, anybody know, an orphan sign? What is an orphan sign? That sounds horrible. I wanted to cry.
I've seen that too, and I don't know
Is that like a ghost sign?
what that means
I just
exactly.
figured it was a sign not being used and just sitting there.
So sad.
I know, I wonder that too.
Okay. One thing they did, which I thought ours doesn't have, but page numbers. Why don't we number our pages on ours? It might be easier to
I thought
talk
I had
about.
page numbers, but that honestly could just be something that I forgot about.
Oh, okay.
I can add page numbers.
Yeah, I thought because it would make it easier to reference certain parts.
Top priority for next strategic plan, page numbers.
Yeah, it's just a little thing. But and then there was looking at our plan. There's a couple of things I noticed, like in our core principles, there's an empty bullet. And
It's supposed to be edgy.
yeah, that's the ghost. Yeah, and I don't think there's nowhere in ours that I noticed where we talk about the RDA's 1% thing that they just.
That's because it wasn't even a
Even
thing back then.
Then, right, and I wonder.
It was one of our goals, though.
Was it in one of the goals?
Yeah.
Or at least like future, like we'd like to do this. So I mean, yeah, we knocked one thing off. Even though it's out of date, we accomplished one thing.
Yeah. And then
But that would definitely be something that would be referenced. because a lot of these reference funding and different funding mechanisms to pursue, and some of them listed very similar to the percent for art, or my brain is blanking on the other option, but they listed a diverse array of funding options that could be pursued to make these things happen, which I think is something that we need to spell out and have that be paired up with the friends group so that they are on board with those things.
Yeah. So that's about all I came up with.
For me, I had the Oregon, and the one thing that I was impressed in is the economic prosperity, how there's intention of assessing and measuring that. I think data is important, so I don't know how they go about doing it. Here's a before the project was there, and then after the project was there, X amount of dollars happened. I don't know if that would be a good argument as for us, as an organization, to be able to give that kind of data. And perhaps it shouldn't just be numbers, there's other ways of measuring success, but I think that data would be significant for us to be able to measure somehow, I don't know. So in a nutshell, it seems like it's kind of repetitive in all the cities, but that's what stuck out for me was the idea of assessing the economic impact.
It builds a great argument for why do you invest in public art? Why should we be putting money towards that effort? But it does, so I totally agree.
Yeah, I thought the way that they laid out the goal and then the reasoning or the actionable items that would come from achieving the goal. This one was good. Like they have to stimulate opportunities for all ages to the arts, and they have provide at least 5% raise visibility of arts and increase the number of art in schools, and they have bullet points underneath all of those.
My turn?
Yes.
So Sugarland was 82 pages long and super comprehensive. It was done by a couple contractors, so the cities hired it out, which was clear because it had a ton of stock data, and it read a lot like a general strategic plan, sort of, and then it was kind of spun off of into a cultural arts type of narrative, I thought, which is great in some ways, but also, like, who's going to read 82 pages? This was huge. But a lot of it was fluff in the back. There was an appendix, 2 different appendices that, frankly, were good data, but I don't know if we need to have all this. There was a lot of stock data on like exactly that economic impact of cultural industries, but it was specifically applied to Sugarland, which was interesting. So it kind of outlined all of those economic indicators in Sugarland specifically, and I wonder where they got that information. But they did a really good job in outlining all that stuff. So they're building a strong case in the back, and also in the Appendix B was an overview of like operating models, pros and cons. So there was like, if you're an artist, and you do this by yourself LLC, these are the pros and cons of that. If you're an artist who wants to enter into a not-for-profit company, these are the pros and cons to do that. And that was pretty extensive as well. So those, with the 2 appendices, were good data. I'm not so sure it was critical for a cultural plan. But the entire feel of it was very informative. Not very specific to Sugarland, I thought. They did break it down like throughout the different chapters, and they chaptered it 1 through 6. Starts out with the intro, then talks about all the methods that they did. Phase 1, 2, and 3, research development, public engagement, and they talked about all the methods of doing that. It's a really good template, or palette, like you called it, Kelly. And then Chapter 3 was defining the needs. So they actually went out and they took the data that they got from the methods and applied it to developing a needs category, which was done okay. It was done all right. But the real good, I think, takeaways from this plan was chapters 4 and 5, which were developing the priorities. And so they outlined the priorities that was based on the needs. And then in chapter 6, that was the strategic plan for those priorities. So they took all the priorities and then broke them down on how they can actually address those priorities through plans. And then the chapter 6 was actually implementing those strategies that were based on the priorities. So it all was super well done, I thought. And then,
Albuquerque is the one that used the most traditional strategic plan for it. I mean, it was an actual strategic plan, whereas some of them were more like, here's a document where we've captured a lot of ideas.
Right. Okay. Well, if you look, I mean, on page 53, it breaks down into this. Did you guys all see this? This pretty easily to understand grant of the implementation guide based on all those priorities. And it takes A all the way through K on priority A. So, and then there's 5 priorities, so A, B, C, D, and E. And it breaks it down so that this was what it will look like in 1 year. This one can be for 5 to 10 years. This is the project budget that you can work on, the estimated budgets for those sub-priorities. And then the lead time, or different entities that you should be partnering with, like private or city or organization partner. I mean, it's like super comprehensive and like really answers a lot of questions that you might have if you have a similar priority based on some needs that you've identified. So I think this graph is well done. I didn't think they had enough visual aids or visual data like some of the other plans did, because artists and creative people are visually oriented a lot of times, and so if you have a lot of these paragraphs and stuff, people might glaze right over it. However, if you have a really interesting diagram that kind of illustrates the same information, I think that would be well received by creatives and artists. So if we could have more of that type of data, I think that would behoove us. I like the idea of the GBPAC just carving out public art. Not only because there's another entity working on it, but that's our wheelhouse. We're the GBPAC, so I think if we carve out that and then contribute that to the broader cultural plan that hopefully we'll be developing soon, I think that would make our time management work best. There wasn't many maps on this one. There's a few maps in priority E, but they're like snapshots of a Google map. We've already done work on some GIS development on like things, so having those maps I think are visual aids that are really good. Let's see. I don't know if we have the budget to hire somebody to like help do this. I mean, Laura, it would be a pretty big undertaking. Like, do you have any timeline on when you think this would be finished?
Coinciding with the city's comp plan, I think that's slated to be ready by 2022.
Oh. So we have a couple of years.
We could move faster.
I would say it could move faster, but that's looking like that's going to be handled internally also. So we're still working on actively divvying out, is this a realistic timeline for this?
Okay.
Who's responsible for these tasks? But I think we would like to develop this alongside that plan so that it can be incorporated or referenced in that plan.
Those are my takeaways. I think those are really good, potentially a little bit too detailed and extensive with the supplemental data that they put in there.
Paul?
I personally like the Lancaster plan. I just thought it was user-friendly, easy to comprehend. What was the Albuquerque one? Just kind of lost me. I mean,
it was very technical.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, they really didn't.
A lot of data, but it wasn't really
right
packaged together.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they displayed some of it interestingly, but holy cow.
And I just like how it broke down the areas of focus in the implementation plan. I don't know. Just trying to absorb all of them. That was the one that kind of stood out to me.
Matt?
I gave comments on other ones, but for the Sugarland one here, I think too, this one seemed to kind of call out how it needed help and who it needed help from in their report. So I thought that was a nice direct shot at other people, kind of, because that's what the plan is for, is so that you can get other people to join in.
Yeah. My final comment on all of the plans, Laura, is that I think maybe with the exception of Duluth, they were clearly done with consultants. All of these documents were done with people who write plans. And they were all professionally designed. So I think in terms of the impact that the plan will have, those need to be serious considerations. And to be honest, it might be a conversation to have with the friends. Because our plan, even if in content we find it to be similarly satisfying to Lancaster, it's not going to look like Lancaster because it's professionally designed. So I think that, and we may not need that. This is not an endorsement of that particular service. I'm just saying one of the reasons we're attracted to these plans and are engaged with them is because they're professionally designed and they use consultants. So I think that the actual process for how we're going to do this is something that there should be some real thought given to. And I think it's important that this be done if the city comp plan is because we have three needs for it, really. We have inclusion or as a reference for the city comp plan, as a reference for the greater arts and culture plan, and for our friends. So in some ways our needs are a little more time sensitive than 2022. It's no good for the city comp plan if ours isn't done first. So I think just a timeline and some thought as to how we're actually going to execute this. And maybe our in-kind service is something we need to approach people about.
Yeah. I think it might be a good idea just to seek out some bids on what it might cost for a consultant to provide some
services. I think, well, I don't know, but with the city, working with the city, we generally, it's not a good idea to put out bids unless you're actually going to hire somebody.
Well, we're really talking about the friends, right? I mean, that's why I'm saying this has to be a conversation with the friends. So yeah. I also work for a government entity, and I have a 501c3 board that exists to help with things like this.
This would be the friends seeking the.
Okay.
Yeah. Because honestly, this is the most powerful fundraising tool in arts and culture that you can have. So as an expense for that group, an investment for that group, I think it is it's really pragmatic and powerful. Going to donors with a document like this, especially when your corporate giving is kind of the bread and butter of this area, I think those are all considerations.
Question.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just real quick. Does Arts Wisconsin provide that service to municipalities? I know they do strategic planning.
I mean, she individually offers her services at a reduced rate.
Okay.
But
I didn't know if that was an option. Or maybe a path towards a different option, like maybe a connections to.
That's a good point. She'd certainly have a list of people we could contact.
Right.
Yeah. And cats. That's sort of.
Yep.
This is potentially something that we could give to people to help leverage other initiatives that are arts related in town, right? This isn't something that just the city would be using. Other people could adopt this and say, hey, look, come to Green Bay because look at all the stuff that's going on.
yeah, I would imagine Kelly Armstrong would be really excited to see a document like this. There are a lot of people who, but ostensibly, I mean, again, just looking at like what we have capacity for, what kind of response we get from our friends, thinking about our timeline, it is important to remember that there is this larger overarching arts and cultural plan in the works as well. So we don't need to do it all by ourselves.
We don't have to be an orphan son.
We do not have to be an orphan. Is there other comments, questions? Laura, did you want to share any more thoughts about your take on these? I think everyone...
I think I shared most of my thoughts as we discussed them. Thank you all for the input. I will work with the friends to inquire about starting to search for potential bids and just getting an estimate of what a consultant would cost or something like this.
Cool.
Great. So let's move on. Chairperson's report and project updates. That's me. The last conversation that was had in preparation for this meeting, honestly, we spent a lot of time talking about a plan. And that the timing was right to put some energy behind this. So Laura very quickly turned all this around. I'm super impressed. Thank you. I think that's really what we spent most of our energy on.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. Coordinators report and project updates.
Also, Kelly, if you have bullet points you'd like me included here, please let me know, because I put these up, otherwise I forget what I want to talk about. And since we were running a little over, I'll go through these quick. Make Music Day 2020. Sylvia Jensen with Mosaic is really going to be, Mosaic really has decided to spearhead Make Music Day. For those who don't know, Make Music Day is just a celebration. It happens on the summer solstice. They also do a winter version too, but Wisconsin, nobody's going to participate here. At least not yet. But Ann Katz with Arts Wisconsin, there's a real drive to have Make Music Day be a Wisconsin-wide celebration. Right now, a few cities do it: Appleton, Madison, Milwaukee. I forget. There's a really small city that does it too. But there's a real push to make this a statewide day of celebration. So it's just a day. Cities do it differently. Some really have a set plan for what occurs. Madison sets up pretty extensive concerts that occur all throughout the city. Others, it's really up to anyone who wants to participate what they do, whether it's a drum circle or
a citywide cover of an NXS song.
Yeah.
I'll just keep pulling for it.
It's really open to what the community itself wants to focus on during that day. But we're working with Mosaic, and there's a lot of other organizations that play too. We're having a meeting. Our next meeting, I think, is scheduled for sometime in March. But I can include you in on those meeting updates if you're interested. But that's on the radar.
When is the day?
It's June 21st. I don't know what exactly we're going to be doing. I don't know how extensive our role is going to be in that either. I think what we're going to be helping out with is really guidance through potential necessary permits or things like that from our end. At least that's what it's looking like right now. City Hall Gallery. For those who haven't noticed, we have artwork up along 6th floor. And also in the mayor's office. That is something that the mayor has really taken an interest in a drive behind, as far as having local artists displaying their artwork within this building. We're just going to be wrapping up our first exhibit, I guess you'd want to say. So if you have time, go downstairs and check out his office if it's open. He should be open. feel free to check that out. And then for the month of February, we have a student exhibit that will be on display there. But this is open to any and all artists. They have to meet our size requirements, and unfortunately, I don't have pedestals at the moment to display any 3D pieces. But that is something that is slowly growing in this building. Grants that we have on the horizon. So back in December, I submitted an application for a Bloomberg grant for an asphalt art project happening within the shipyard development. And Matt and I are working on an NEA grant that kind of focuses within that same area. We're going to have a conversation with Laura on Thursday to really inquire about our application. It's going to, from what it seems like right now, it'll focus within that shipyard development area just because there's a lot of movement and development happening there right now. And then lastly, we have a new intern that will be starting. Her first day actually is on Monday. Her name is Nicole. She is a communications major with an arts management minor. So I think I will be tasking her mostly with developing, I know you brought up a long time ago about starting an Instagram account and having more impact social media wise. We don't have a social media plan specifically for the PAC. I know our department has a social media policy that we've set up, but I would like her to focus on formulating something a little more tailored to what we do. Maybe having a specific posting schedule or things like that, because right now we're kind of floating in the breeze. But I'd like to have something a little more concrete going forward. And since she does focus on communications, I thought it would be a good fit for her. If there are other things that you think she should be focusing on, let me know. And I have to confirm with her yet, but if her school schedule allows, she will be attending our meetings every month. But right now it looks like she'll be in the building like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Or not Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. That's all I have at the moment.
Any questions for Laura?
Well, I did, and I was going to ask the mayor about this. The gallery in his office, which is cool, but I mean, it is in his office. That's not exactly a public area. I mean, it's used for business.
He does have open office hours every week that we mention. It's been a slow process getting those social media posts out, but he does hold weekly open office hours that people are welcome to go then. Otherwise, if they would, we've had other people kind of schedule times that they can go.
But
Also, what a powerful statement that the mayor is
Oh, yeah, I think it's great.
placing her in his
But I
office.
wonder if we're also looking at some other areas that might be more publicly accessible. Are we?
I've been looking at putting sculptures within the entryway atriums. I'm having a bit of a backlash with risk management. Not backlash, it's not that violent. But mostly just, that's not safe, we can't do that. So I have to keep reworking how we can actually make art happen in those spaces. There's a lot of fire code regulations and other things like that we're working on. But I do want to have more artwork, not just on this floor, but I would love to have more artwork throughout the whole building in general. Something else that we've kind of been discussing internally is sprucing up our stairwells somehow. Once again, there's a lot of fire requirements just because that is an emergency exit. We can't hang things on the wall. We can't have anything that's really distracting. I was told no optical illusions that confuse people.
Well, that takes all the fun out of it.
But we've started discussing the potential of putting some sort of mural or embellishment along the stair risers. There is discussions of having it expand beyond just this floor in the mayor's office, but unfortunately, Nate keeps squashing all my dreams.
Good work, Laura.
And Laura,
Yeah.
just one remark on the Make Music Day. I always envisioned the accordion has been adopted by many cultures. I'm wondering if there was like a big accordion.
Yeah.
something where, you know, because it's a popular instrument of a lot of cultures, so.
Players.
And then, I mean, that's
I'm just throwing it out, I'm, you know, ring out the
like
barrel.
that idea.
Yeah.
One big number on the city day.
There's a video of somebody's Make Music Day where they literally they did a call to the whole community to do a cover of Personal Jesus, not In Excess, Depeche Mode.
Yeah.
And it's like they're on a huge football field and there's like hundreds of guitar players and hundreds of vocalists and hundreds of drum kits and the whole town plays Personal Jesus. It's amazing.
There's a lot.
This is what I'm pulling for.
The variety of what you can do for Make Music Day. There's like boom whacker sticks. They've done like boom whacker sticks, sword fight, like battles, and a kazoo core. Like it's insane the amount of variety you can do. So we're having that. I'll definitely invite you guys to that meeting. And feel free to bring others that you think would be really helpful in that process. It's kind of a grassroots push.
They need to get Jackie at Titletown.
I think she's
in.
I think she's.
I forwarded it to her, but I don't know that she's actually shown up Friday.
Okay.
Has Alder Stoyer been involved at all with his chord, what is it? Strike a chord?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm sure you'd like to at least know about it.
We've only had, there's been a lot of like conference call type meetings that we've had so far, and we've only had one in-person meeting. But March will be kind of our larger convening. It's just been like organizations at this moment, but
Strike a chord does have some funds available.
And that's the beauty of this too, is you can do it for nothing, and you can have a large budget attached to it too. So, with it being the first year, I think it'll be interesting, but I'd like to see it really take off.
And just before we adjourn, just one request. Can we do one 2020 photo, please? Just one.
Alex, our documentarian.
Just one 2020. There we go.
We can do it after we adjourn, I guess.
Can we just line up? You can sit there as just people line up. Come on. Just line up. Sit down.
Oh, sitting.
Come on, Laura, you need to stand over here. Come on,
Matt.
Come on, guys, come on. You need Instagram stuff here.
All right. One more. There we go.
Thank
A few of them. Hopefully one of them turns out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn it. Second.
From Randy, then Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Good work, folks.